I think you're still muted. Just so you know. You are still muted. As far as I'm aware, you are muted.
Let's try this again.
Hey, there you go.
I mean, you think after all this time I would actually know how to run this thing? So let's welcome all our customers. I like that. All our guests and all the people out there watching us this episode. Thanks for coming out. We have a pretty special episode today. I had Bumi was on a show a little while ago talking about transitioning from a mod to knight, and Duke Edmund was on from basically knight to mod. So it was a really good episode, and we talked a bit, and he was interested in helping out more. And I watched a number of his shows. They're wonderful. I hope everybody enjoys his shows as much as I have been, since I've been watching a few of them. And he can tell you where those are later. But the thing we talked about was basically fitness and mobility, and all of these other things that help us continue along in the career that we have, and we all deal with them, young, old. It's just a thing that happens. But he had a lot of great ideas. He has a wonderful studio and actually workplace that he does stuff in, and so he came up with some great ideas, and I'm going to kind of let him run with the show. Now I'm going to warn everybody that this is a little outside our normal structure. So we're going to actually invite people into the show and put them on screen to ask questions. And Bumi's going to try to help as best he can. And once again, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew Bumi's both a mod in the SCA, Master of Defense, and a knight in Atlantia. So welcome, Bumi. Thank you very much for doing this for us. And I'm going to try to stay out of your way as much as possible. But if we run into technical stuff, I'll jump back in and we can kind of help and deal with that. And we got a great audience, so they'll understand. And if it goes well, I hope we get the chance to do this some more.
Sounds good.
All right. All yours.
So, I think that's
Go ahead. I'll
you go ahead and do that. I won't anywhere your movement there. Hello, everybody. As Brannos said, my name is Bumi. So first and foremost, I am not a doctor. I don't claim to be. I do work specifically working with bodies and caring for your body, but I want to make that disclaimer up front and first and foremost, because this is not legal medical advice. So covering my ass here. That's one. Two, if you have questions, what I would like to do is to post your questions down in the comments, either in the face. Oh, big echo. Thank you. Let's fix that. Brannos, can you mute yourself for a second?
Yep.
All right. Tiki, can you hear me? Am I still getting a big echo? I imagine it's not. Is it better? Or is this on? Is it my own kind of group? Is the echo still there? Is the echo still there? Okay. Let's do this.
There you go.
Right. Can you hear me now? How is this? Hello. I just want to be able to say things without having to be heard. We could teach. Yeah. Hey, better. That's an improvement from echo. That's a huge improvement from echo. All right, let's start this again. Welcome, everybody. I would like to post any fitness questions that you might have down in the comment below. We're taking and speaking that way, as well as over at I think on Facebook and YouTube. Those both feed into this chat. You are also welcome to join and ask a video question if you want to talk directly. I'm happy to speak with you. And you can either message Brannos and he'll pull you in, or send you a link in which you can join. I'm also going to go ahead and get my normal advertising done. We'll post in a couple of places real quick, and then we'll see if we have somebody in queue. Brannos, I think you're good to unmute. I think the echo is purely on my end.
Yep, I'm just catching up here. Let me get my places ready. Okay.
Just let me know if people are popping in, and I'll finish my ad at 13.
So we're going to go ahead and share. I'm going to work on grabbing the link, and we're going to share the link to get on the show. What's going to happen is you're going to be put in a queue, and we will actually click on you, and you'll pop into the show when you're up. And when we're done answering a question, if you don't mind actually getting back out of StreamYard, because we only have so many queue locations, about 10 queue locations to work with. So if everybody doesn't mind. Also, we're getting probably a little bit of echo because he has to use, Bumi has to use a different mic to actually move around the room. You will get some echo from a lot of times from wireless mics and things like that. We will try to improve that over time. But for now, if you absolutely can't hear, just let us know. But I will try to help as much through that. Earlier today, it was sounding all right. Not as good as a mic that sits right in front of us, but it was still sounding enough that I could hear it. So please bear with us. All right, give me 1 second, and I will get you a link, and we're going to publish that right now. You know what? I had it right here. And bang. All right, I published that in the Facebook page. If you click on that link, you're able to essentially come right into the show, and then we'll bring you on in order as we see people pop up as best as we can. But meanwhile, Bumi, I believe you had at least a couple of people ask questions on your answer line, didn't you?
Yeah. So what we did was collect a few voicemails, essentially.
Yeah.
Via SpeakPipe, and I'm happy to go start answering those immediately. So I want to play this.
Start with the first one. Why don't you start with the first one, and then I'll prompt some folks out here as we go.
Sounds good. Second here. All right. So this is our first message in. Oh, that was it. Good. Did you hear that, Street?
I did not hear that, actually.
Did not hear that.
I know, and I just heard it earlier today when we were testing this. So
let's try this again.
I can see it playing.
Yeah. All right, we have a question reading now from Bess. But I'm curious how the best searching exercise for SEA also is searching actually necessary. Okay, we're gonna start there since we didn't have audio on this right thing. I'm going to move to a second camera. We're gonna do this. Hey, look at that, that's working. Because I'm in headphones, Brannos, if you're speaking at me, I won't be able to hear.
See the screen.
Yeah, just like.
Yep.
Chat. Someone tell Brannos things. They can tell me you're related. They're going to post some chat. Very often. Hopefully, you still hear.
All right. Hi, chat. I can talk to you. You can't talk to me. So here we are. The first question was from Bess: is stretching necessary, as well as is it important? And what are some good stretches for SCA combat in particular? So I'm going to start with stretching, when done correctly, regains ranges of movement or mobility that you lose as you progress and get older and older in life. And the reason this happens is, if you can imagine, like small children typically are very pliable. They bend in every which way. They can like tumble down some stairs and be just fine because instead of breaking, they bend. Flexible, they move, whereas if you put on some muscle and then all of a sudden your movement gets restricted, but you also get pulled in that same direction due to some outside force, usually gravity, someone hitting you, etc., that then breaks in some fashion, right? Whether it's at the bone or the connective tissue. And really stretching, a combination of stretching plus fascia release with intent, and then strengthening those end ranges of movements is what helps prevent injury in the long run. And this is across the board. We talk to anybody in this field, and they all generally agree, all the practitioners agree, that those things are what work best for injury prevention. Now, your question was looking at armored as well as rapier, I believe, in terms of stretching. And for me, I just do some ones that I know are tight on myself. I'll just give a couple of examples. In fencing, we end up doing a ton of lunging. And so for myself, I will warm up by just doing these deep lunges, trying to really work my back hip flexor, working my ankle, and just strengthen both legs. As I push up, unless I'm driving off my heel or the full of my foot, as opposed to being toe driven back, I want to be driving off of both chains as equally as I can to warm up. As far as upper body is concerned, I really enjoy, if you imagine, right, whether you're fencing like this or whether you're doing armored things like this, your arm is out in front of you. So when we throw a flat snap, force is all very in front of you. When you throw anything, when you thrust forward, everything is out in front of you, which means in sword sports, your front delt and your side delt tend to get a lot of work. And so for myself, I like to stretch those out. And for myself, I'll do it with like a high-low stretch. You've seen the ones where you are reaching up your back and down with your hands. Hopefully I'm not messing up the mic too much. But what I'm looking to do is interlock and pull that back arm up. You do the same thing, kind of grabbing an item and working your way down in this fashion. It does the same kind of or similar stretch, a little less rotation. So those are hopefully two of the biggest ones that I use. If you want any elaboration on it, please continue those comments down below.
So I have a YouTube question, Thorfinn, and I'll just throw it on the bottom of the screen.
All right. Does your training differ between fencing and right hand? Oh man, it does drastically. Most of his retaining out, right? That's the biggest difference. I need to hit with a telling blow as opposed to fencing, which is most of it is touches. If not touches, putting half an inch through somebody's person. Fencing is a little bit faster, and so.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say fencing is faster, and so I train mostly footwork to keep my explosive linear motions up in fencing, as opposed to armor, where I care more about being able to hold a bunch of weight and strength and endurance, as well as a lot more lateral movement as we walk around people. All right, so we're about to say something.
So you had another question. Bess asked how this right here.
How long does one stretch for? Ideally, I would do two things before fighting, and this is every practice, every event. I would do roughly 5 minutes of elevating your heart rate. Right? That could be like jogging, jumping jacks, split squats. It doesn't really matter. Anything to kind of get your just hopping up and down, jump rope type motions. Whatever you do to get your heart rate elevated in that time frame. So let it spike, let it go down. That's one. And then for the stretching, another 5 or so minutes of just the stretches to help prevent injury in your specific case. I don't know your person, I've never worked with in particular, but I want to just really emphasize that when you stretch, it's injury prevention. So if you have shoulder issues, to really spend some time working on that shoulder. Hopefully that makes sense. It's targeted toward your particular needs. If you want general stretching, 5 minutes, target.
Is there any time, I think she might have been asking also, is there any time how long you would hold a individual stretch?
How long? Yeah. If it's about like a singular stretch, it depends on the stretch, but I go by 2 easy ones. If it is something that's a passive stretch versus an active stretch, I would do a passive stretch for about 30 seconds in a cycle versus an active stretch where I would do like a 10 by 5 seconds of high intensity.
So here's another question for you. And I think we listened to this one earlier today.
Oh, yeah. Let's see if we can pull it up. I'm gonna try this audio again.
So this is the tennis elbows. Yeah, tennis elbow and shoulder impingement.
Yeah, can you hear this this audio?
I cannot. Are you? Did you do did you actually present that window? I can see the windows. And let me add it to the stage and do it again.
Yeah, let me try that.
Oh, I know this worked today, so I'm kind of interested that it's not working right now. And I see your volume's good, but I can't hear this one, unfortunately.
Weird. Let's see. I'm going to try to represent it.
Okay. Thanks for everybody for giving us a chance. This is a little bit of a learning experience, but we're getting there.
Let's see. We're going to present video file. Nope.
I think that the biggest piece is I was kind of surprised that I think when you put the earbuds in, it might have stopped it from working or something.
Oh, like my output is, yeah, that might.
Okay.
Not bad. Alright. Send. Screen. Window. Share. Any audio?
No, nothing. Let me add it to the stage. You can't actually hear it unless you add it. Hit it again. Hit play again. Nope.
All right. Well, I'm going to be the person to. I'm going to repeat this. Let's see.
Yeah. If you share, did you drop any of these in that Google Share? I can always try to get those primed up.
Yeah, let's do that. Let me send this to you. Sorry, chat. I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to send this over.
Okay.
And then.
I'm going to work on opening that because I think this one was in the Google Share already. So.
It should already be there. Yeah, if you want to pull it up for me, please. I'll go ahead and talk to the next one. Q. Let's see. Iliotibial bonds in your preferred stretches, pre-fencing. This is not hurting as much. All right. Let's see. Pull that. All right. So usually, and this is going to be a generalization without having the option J to work directly with you. One of the biggest things you can do are stretches for both your posterior and your anterior chin.
So we're looking for things like, this is a pre-fencing warm-up. So I do pre-fencing, right? We're talking about these kinds of stretches, but one of the things that you do for long-term benefit is a quad stretch against the wall, and then a forward fold for your posterior chin, your hamstring, your glutes. So the quad stretch against the wall looks like this. I'm taking my knee, I'm driving it into a corner against the wall, and taking my upper body and trying to first get my butt to the wall. Secondly, I'm going to get my upper back to the wall. And then lastly, I'm going to try to engage my abs, creating a hollow body, and getting my lower back to the wall. And this lights up two things. It lights up my quads, these guys, right? It's stretching all of these big muscles out, as well as my hip flexor here.
which it'll go back and forth depending on which is feeling tight in the moment and which has loosened up. And the reason you want to do that, as well as working out your hamstring through that forward fold looking like this, right? A simple forward bend. Keys being you engage your quads to straighten your legs, and then you're reaching for the floor. Ideally, you're reaching the matter, hopefully you can still hear me, such that it is intense. It should be very difficult to find a spot on the floor to drive to. I usually give cues for my clients, such as you're going to either reach to touch your fingers, or your palms, or your first set of knuckles, or your punching knuckles, just to have something affixed to shoot for. And then over time, you bring your feet closer and closer together, thus making you taller, thus making it more difficult to reach the ground. That's how you progress that forward fold. You can also do that forward fold with some weight to start off if you have particularly tight hamstrings. The reason we do those two things, because what you're talking about is tightness along your leg on the outside typically. While there is not necessarily, depending on the severity of it, not necessarily a direct cure, sometimes it's icing it and resting it. What you're doing is when you lengthen your anterior chain and your posterior chain, it allows the ligaments, right, like that IT band, like the ones in your knee, to basically experience a lot less stress. One of the biggest things that happens is if your quad gets too tight, you'll feel tightness above and below your kneecap while you're doing life, because this is so tight, pulling everything up and taut. So hopefully that makes sense as far as how to work on loosening up your legs for the purposes of fighting. A very quick TLDR.
All right, let me try my video with this sound.
Hello, I can hear things again. Oh, yes, let's do it.
Hi to Bumi and the other coaches. I would like your recommendations on training and re-injury prevention. In my case, I currently am dealing with recovery from shoulder impingement, double tennis elbow, and some minor wrist issues. I have been checked out by a doctor, but have had no luck in strengthening the left arm up enough for training, which is my shield arm. Appreciate the help. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's a big one. There's several things in there, and this one is from Siggy. All right, I'm gonna grab a shield and I'll leave it on that.
And once again, everyone, we're just trying to go through each question as they're asked.
All right, so this is my practice shield. I'm just gonna use this for now, just to demonstrate. So, you're talking about two different things, shoulder impingement, as well as tennis elbow. So tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, those kinds of ideas are basically overuse and tightness in the ligaments leading into the point of the elbow, either inside or outside, and that changes whether we call it tennis or golfers or various kind of colloquial terms for them. But the idea is that you have either unhappiness on the outside or the inside, because of tightness through that chain and inflammation. And then impingement is super common. This is crazy. Once I started learning about impingement, it is extremely common among anyone who does sporting activity for a long duration of time, over many years, or as a lifter of any sort. When you go to the gym, even if you're doing casual, you bench a bunch, that causes shoulder impingements very frequently. What's happening is this. Your shoulder joint is a ball and socket, just like that. And if you do a bunch of motions where you're out in front of you, whether it's holding a shield or fighting with swords or doing things that are, again, out in front of your body, you tend to overuse the front and side of your delt, sides and front, holding it up and then pushing it forward. Hopefully that makes sense. You're using certain parts of your shoulder and not the other bits. So what happens is if your shoulder is that ball and socket, and it's just held in place by four main ligament bands that rotate and some others that wrap around, and if one part is too strong, it tightens up and starts to pull that shoulder, that ball, very literally toward one side. Now what happens is from that point, now there's less room
between that ball for those ligaments to function. The most common version is the impingement, where the top of your shoulder point, right here, where my bone runs down, and everyone has one, it has a different curvature to it. That point of your shoulder and that ball underneath, it goes forward and kind of closer to that point, such that when you raise your arm, the ligaments that are in between get pinched. And then it inflames, so it swells up a little bit because the blood's going to it to try to heal it. And it gets pinched more, and it hurts more and more, and it grows over time. This is an extremely common ailment for many, many humans. And this is unfortunately a fairly long recovery time. I've had it myself. It took probably better part of 3 months to heal up. And it took a lot of stretching. For me, learning that, I am very strong in this direction and just very weak in these other directions where I don't use enough rear delt, I don't do enough external rotation, overhead extension with my low traps, and there's just, or really working my rhomboids, my scapular retraction. So it's that imbalance that caused that impingement. So before you can get back to using your shield and holding it out in front of you and doing all the things you normally do with a shield or a sword, you need to work on making sure that shoulder regains its mobility. And some simple tests are things like this. Can you take your hand with a neutral hand instead of a supinated or a pronated hand and bring it such that you're getting a straight line from elbow to shoulder to torso? Mine's not a straight line, but it's a whole lot straighter than it was so many years ago when I also kind of went down this road of, what is this shoulder impingement? Why does this happen to me? How do I remedy it? And what I found is one check, this overhead extension. One version of this test is holding an object in a supinated position, and as you lift it, you can see the point in which it starts to turn, it starts to rotate. So there's internal rotation. It's hard to keep it externally rotated. And that is something you can improve over time. You want that item further and further up. For myself, it was overactive high lats. So I did a bunch of things called butcher blocks, which is just doing like stretching, passively stretching out my lats in this version or in this version. And then doing fascial release, rolling it out to lengthen it, and then strengthening my my back across the board. Really, that's the honest and TLDR version of it. That's a long-winded way to talk about shoulder impingement as well as a test.
Oh yeah, that back. I tell you, the back, strengthening the back, and I really love those stretches in the test you just showed. That goes a long way to, just knowing some of these tests go a long way to help you understand what's going on with you, right?
Absolutely, that's it. And that's something that I tell all of my clients is if you cannot measure it, you can't really manage it. And that is something that is true across the board. You need to be able to have metrics and goals. In the same way you can put plates onto a bar and lift it in a particular fashion and add a little bit at a time and increase your reps or your sets or your resistance over time. Similarly, I would do exactly that.
Here's another question.
Best, can you speak about proprioception, how peasant fighting is an exercise? Of course. Proprioception is the idea that you have the ability to know where you are in space. So check this out. This is everyone. Everyone in chat, everyone watching right now, you can take your hand, doesn't matter which hand, put it behind your head so that you can't see it, right? My hand's behind my head, I can't see it. However, if you told me to take my thumb and touch my middle finger, I can just do it. It just happened. I don't have to look at it. Hopefully, I'm demonstrating it appropriately. Touching my pinky, touching my index finger, touching my ring finger. The reason I can do this is because there's the idea that you have where you are, you know where you are in 3D space. Cool thing about proprioception is that also there's research that shows that it also extends to weapons and any implements that you hold, because we are tool creatures, tool-using creatures, and that's how we evolved. So our brains can process now the end of the sphere as well, from holding the sphere. That's inside. The way we practice it. For those who don't know, I am
black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I do a ton of grappling. I have fucked up years from doing it for so long. And I teach that as well at a local school. But in grappling, a lot of times you have to, because I am trying to use my upper body to drive somebody else's upper body downward, I have to use awareness of my body in space to feel where my hips and legs are moving to then pass their hips and legs. And it is very much driven by tactile response and knowing where your body is in space and what it's feeling. In armored in particular, this is something I've been working on the last 5-6 weeks, is sticky hands with a polearm. When I'm facing another polearm, when they charge inevitably into a range, I'm going to take my pole, I'm going to push into theirs, either going under their hands, lifting up the throw, or driving down throw over top. But either way, I want to feel that out. I spend time here just willing to let them move, for me to move into the flow with kind of the resistance that they're getting. Hopefully that makes sense as far as the inversion practice. And there's many ways to practice this. I'm sure Brannos has tons of them as well. Let's see. Scrolling up from Chris. Brannos, you're speaking of it. You're reading right now. All right, anyways, from Chris, depending on the format of the tournament and how you are climbing the tree, there may be delays in getting the next fight. What are some things you recommend to the some delays in getting to the next fight? What are some range of emotional, very, very tools? Okay, so I think the question is, how do you stay moving between tournament bouts? And one of the things that I do, at least personally, is I spend a lot of time stretching exactly what I need to stretch before another fight. But in function, if I'm at pound the last many pounds that I fought, I'm going to take maximum rest. I'll have done my stretching prior, day prior, weeks prior, right? It's all the training that goes into that day. That day is all about performance. And so during that day, I usually do a little less, which means I just sit rest. It's my height. Those are the main things. I think that I want performance, I'm not going to do as much energy expenditure unnecessarily. Protection.
So here's another question.
Mm-hmm. What would you suggest for strengthening the stabilization muscles along the T-spine? Is there, so it depends on whether you're talking about the vertical ones or the horizontal one, whether we're talking about kind of rhomboid scapular movement or looking at moving your back. So we're going to look at this. So they're talking T-spine as like mid-back thoracic spine versus lumbar and cervical, and something to strengthen the middle of your spine. There's two things. One, you can always flex and extend it forward back. Right? This is what I think of as like a vertical movement. Right? There's these big spinal erectors that run up and down your spine, and they allow you to do all the movement and bending that you need to. But that doesn't speak to, like for instance, moving your shoulders in this direction. So I don't know if you mean a little bit more left-right movement out of your back versus forward-back movement. I'm going to go with this as I think you're talking about. So for me, a Jefferson curl is a really good version. You take a lightweight. I'm going to grab 20 pounds here, a relatively lightweight. I'll grab a couple of platforms here. The goal, a Jefferson curl, your intent is to go very slowly and try to expand the ligaments and the muscles in between each node of your spine, each vertebrae. So when you start off, it's very much a practice intention. As I'm coming down, I'm thinking about trying to lengthen every little bit. So I'm using the front of my chain, front of my core, my abs,
to create this bend as I'm going forward. And I'm looking to round as much as possible as I come all the way down. This is slow and intentional, not something meant to be rushed, and then you pull back up as well. So I'm looking to this way. I can feel it in the low back right now. I'm coming up. This gets a little bit more into the thoracic spine, mid spine. And here, I feel it working top of the mid spine, and then rolling back into that cervical spine all the way up. So that is a Jefferson curl, is I think the most common flow for it, but I'm sure it goes under different names. This is just a weighted, intentional spine curl. Both together. And your passive up, get your active version of it.
So was that Jefferson's curl basically for the vertical of the spine, right?
Yes, it is the kind of head to low back.
Yeah, Thoron, he said vertical, so that sounds like he nailed the spot that he was on. I've just another question, because I have a lot of people suffering from it, and I've helped people over a long period of time with this, and that is the difference between, just so people can understand and test it, the difference between a golfer's elbow and a tennis elbow.
So the gist is, right.
The gist is this: there's a couple of ways that you can have to your elbow, right? These are the points of your elbow, the things that we cover in armored fighting, because it hurts to get hit there, and it sucks. There is like the inside, right? If I hold my hands in a supinated fashion like this is the inside line of my body, the medial line of my body. There is ligaments that run here, and then the ligaments that run across here. So it could be the medial on the kind of shoulder side versus hand side. Both can be the issue, above or below. And then you have the outside, right? The outside of my arm. And the same deal happens. You have your hand side, wrist side versus the shoulder side. And those are your four major points of attachment and so usually golfers, tennis, or like typing, like overuse injuries happen in one of those spaces. And you kind of have to identify which one. Colloquially, people say anything that hurts your elbow, that hurt as tennis elbow or golf. They just kind of use it as a general term. Those aren't very specific. What I would think about is which side you're looking at, and the medial side or the outside, whether or not you're below or above, kind of shoulder side or wrist side.
So in the past, I've used mostly, and I've had people, I haven't had golfers, I get tennis. Mm-hmm. And I had a severe tennis to the point where early in my career I was going to quit because it was a pain. 2 years, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody showed me some stretching. Is there specific stretching for tennis elbow, and is there specific stretching for golfer's elbow?
Yeah, tennis elbow is like the outside one.
Yep.
And then golfer's the inside, and not golfer.
Right. Is there a way to?
Yeah, absolutely.
To stretch them?
So let's I'm going back over here. We're going to test a few things. As with most of the way I kind of approach and tech a body is troubleshooting. And what you're looking for is places where you have big muscular bands that can be stretched further and they're tightening up. Because muscles have a lot of blood flow, they have a lot of elasticity and should have a lot of elasticity. But you lose that either through lack of use or buildup of knots. Like if your body doesn't have enough proteins in a moment and rebuilds with a little bit of mineral. There's a number of reasons. There's also various versions of your brain affecting it. So for instance, we hold tension from stress in our tracts a lot of times. So there's a number of factors that cause those muscles to no longer be as elastic as they were when we were young. Some of it is building more muscle. But that said, you can be very, very strong. Obviously, a lot of muscle fiber, very big muscles, but still be equally flexible.
there are plenty of powerlifters who can also do the splits. They don't have to be part. It just takes a little bit more work to regain that mobility. Or if you keep it the whole time, that's ideal. So for your shoulder specifically, the tennis elbow and the golfer's elbow, what we want to do is test those ranges of motion and look at things like external rotation and internal rotation. So a very simple test, aside from the overhead extension, is to put yourself up against the wall. Hopefully everybody can see me. I know I'm kind of in the back of the room. For myself, I have my elbows. I'll have my client put their elbow just below shoulder height and then roll it toward internal rotation and then up toward external rotation. And what I'm looking for are the both shoulder blades are still touching the wall and the hand's able to reach and how far it's able to reach into each direction. I have found some armored fighters where, or really fighters in general, I've worked with rapier fighters as well, where they can do this much internal rotation. They can easily do great external rotation. And so that imbalance is probably what's causing the asymmetry pulling into their elbow. Alternatively, I've worked with some people who have pretty good internal external rotation, but they have awful overhead extension. So as they lift their arm, because they've used so much front delt, it like stops right here. Or they use so much lat in their pull-up human. They just kind of stop here and just can't bring their arm any further back. And that causes, or potentially causes, the same problem. The other part is straight arm internal and external rotation. This is an old test that I use, but this is external rotation. Everybody can do this at home if you want. So what you can do is you turn your hands in a thumb down position, you interlock, and you pull it across, like towards your chest and all the way out. And what that tests is the external rotation of the upper arm. So again, I'm in this position, and now I'm testing my right arm, the external rotation of this arm, but a straight arm version. So internal, external rotation with a bent arm, internal, external rotation with a straight arm, and overhead extension are usually when you find the asymmetry that you can fix to alleviate, not fully recover, alleviate the long-term stress on your tennis and golfer's elbow. That is the work that is the stretching portion.
So what you're saying is like if you have these, some of this has to do with strength differences between the two muscle groups?
Correct. Almost always. Yep. So if you can imagine, I'll give a very similar example in my hand. This happens to, I think, most sword fighters, definitely to grapplers. Check this out. This is for everybody in the chat. Hopefully you can see me on the screen. You see how when I bend my wrist this way, I'm getting a nice 90-degree angle. But when I bend, and this is using the front of my forearm, these muscles here, pull it down, and here I am. When I go back to the other side, check this out, I have way less movement here. You can see the angle, and you can feel the back of your forearm. If you're doing this with me, you can feel the back of your forearm burn. However, what I have is a lack of strength, right? Going back here, because what I have, if I took my hand and bent down, I can get to 90. Check this out, we can do 90 degrees. But this is what's called passive stretching. I'm using an outside force to stretch myself to the position I want. If I can passively stretch there, what that has told me is that I have an asymmetry of strength. I am not strong enough here for how stinking strong I am here. And that's very true because I spend most of the time like more grappling and choking people by doing this. This is a common motion. Grab some knee and pulling this way. Also, when you fight, a lot of times people fight kind of curl it. We're doing this a lot more than we do this generally. But it depends on the fighter. Some fighters have no problem. You have a nice 90-degree bend. It's just how they fight. I have a problem where a lot of people, similar to myself, because of the lack of just strength going back this way, when I throw a flat step, I have to like angle more the shoulder because I don't have the flattest of snaps because I can't deliver that pizza and anything flat plank, or ideally really even a downward drop onto the edge of the machine. So, hopefully that makes sense.
It's super interesting, actually. I never thought about the flexibility in that hand for a good flat snap or a dropping, let that sword drop down into a different angle.
Mm-hmm. That's why some people have a ton of trouble. They always strike at it from the low high, right? You want the end of the sword lower than the base. That's what we tell everybody. Generally, that's generally understood information. And just depending on the human, whether they can do it or not, it becomes an issue.
Huh. I do a lot of stuff with my wrists and fingers, but never thought about it. The strength difference and the flexibility difference. So that's something.
If you have wrists like mine, you can do just strength. All I do is I open my fingers, spread them as wide as I can, just pull them back. And you can feel immediately there's a huge burn.
That would burn right there.
Yeah, and that's your strengthening it. And you just do that for sets and reps because you spend so much time doing this. If you work the opposite, and at least some amount, you start to regain some of that motion over time. If you want to add weight to it, you want to grab something, pull it back, because it gets the back of the hand, like a band, rubber band, that sort of thing. Just really burn this muscle out.
Great. We got another question from let's take. I'm going to take Leslie. Actually, let's take this one first.
Last year, I had severe health issues. We started treatment with tennis and golfers. We had pitcher done. To be very honest, I haven't worked with pitchers up in any great amount. I don't have baseball players. I run through my particular practice. However, what pitchers we have access to so much information. Amazing. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I was looking at kind of where the diagram shows. So the pitcher's elbow looks like it is going to affect a little bit lower. So golfer's elbow is on the outside, then toward the shoulder side. Pitcher's elbow is like this lower bit on that quick search. That actually needs to be formed.
That's good to know.
Yeah, like I said, in my head when I because these are colloquial terms, I just tend to think about the four quadrants of where it could be attached because it's really just there's a point of attachment that's in play instead of thinking about the insertion points. All right.
And then here's another one.
Are there injuries that are more prevalent for women fighters and male fighters that which we know in female specific questions with men? Also, that women's arm is like the male second infection shot stroke. I'm going to paint things in a very broad stroke. There can be broad stroke differences because of general practice, right? I tend to think of men as in a very generalized sense, a little bit stronger with pushing motions because they're more, I think it's more social than anything else, to be honest. Men can go and do push-ups and bench press than women, just a crossbar. I don't know why, it's just a weird social thing. But if you wanted to be strong in that specific way, you can do it yourself. And honestly, let's see, looking at the video, it's very gendered. I'm one of those judges. This is kind of interesting. We're going back over here. I had a couple of cases, this is really fascinating, where women had the issue, so a few of my clients who happen to be women had the issue of having hips that were malaligned, as in one hip was higher than the other. Here, do that. So that's an example. This hip is now higher than the other. I'm trying to make it like an exaggerated example, which it wasn't that bad. And then it was also like the one that was higher was also a little bit more in front. Like they wanted to cant their hips this way, naturally. Like I said, I'm exaggerating the motion, but it had an asymmetry to it. I was like, I wonder why. And after kind of digging into it, I found that, so as humans, when we carry children, we tend to carry them on, like for women especially, carry them on one hip. But then you don't change that hip. You just have a favorite hip for whatever reason, for whether it's comfort or just getting used to one side. And then you just favor that hip for the next year. And you don't really like choose to alternate 50-50 for most people, generally. Like you're just gonna go to your favorite side. And that favorite side creates that asymmetry to where now you have some oblique muscles that are lengthened and shortened on the other side, as well as your leg muscles kind of end up a little lengthened and a little shortened with asymmetry.
So they were wondering if there's and they posted that was a great answer, totally. But they were asking if there's any specific stretches, and I think some of, like, if you had that hip condition, how would you, like, what did you do for possibly your clients that would have that condition?
So the side that's pop up, we get a shorter oblique. So you're going to stretch opposite the healthy temperature. Off the other camera, yay! Side note, this is where I work out. And the implements that you see here are the ones that I use myself. So when you have one hip that is higher than the other, and a little forward, what happens is this side gets shortened because this hip is high. So I'm trying to do the hip thing because I'm not used to doing it. So this side is shortened and this side is elongated. So you need to do things such as intentionally keeping your toes pointed forward and stretching out that tight side. That's one really important part. Two, typically you're going to have one leg that's going to be the straight leg, and then one leg that's like the bent leg. You see how, like, I can straighten out one leg, kind of pop my hip to the side, and now what I'm doing is locking my bone structure to be able to stand up, as opposed to staying soft at my knees and making my muscles do the work, which is perfectly valid. So I might be here, I straighten that leg, I pop that hip, and I'm holding an object off of that hip. Now, what happens is this leg becomes really good at being very straight, and the other leg isn't as good, and it's better at being bent. And so one side will have better stabilizers in the glute. Usually it's the side that's the straight leg, whereas the short side, the bent side, tends to be stronger because, like I said, when the knee is bent, you're not locking up with your bones, you're using muscles. So this one tends to have better big movers, as in like your quads, your calves, and your hamstrings. And so that's what you're going to do is spend time working with the glute on this side with some like straighter leg balance exercises. And then the other side has to work on bending and being stronger in this bent motion, if that makes sense. We're just working out the asymmetries. Working out does not have to be symmetrical, and usually if you're going for maximum efficiency, should not do this.
Perfect. So, really, I mean, there's a lot of just, this is really what I'm hearing, is a lot of balance. I mean, we're talking about a lot of balance between either strengthening or stretching, right?
Correct, yep. The big three for me are when you stretch it, fascial release, and strengthen. Those are the three things you need to do to kind of create and foster that balance in your person. There is, let's see, we didn't really touch on fascial release. I'll talk about what we're doing. I'll really demonstrate. If you want to try this at home, you're welcome to. All you really need is let's do it with a foam roller, a common implement that gym finds. So this is for everybody at home. If you want to try it with me, you're welcome to. Just grab a foam roller and a little bit of floor space.
Probably set
So,
up like
for instance, if my quads are tight, it'll be very obvious. When you see somebody with tight quads, they don't want to sit their butt down because they'll get to about here, it's somewhere in here, and just lock and stop. And they'll be like, ow, my knees, because now you can't, this doesn't stretch more, so these feel a lot of tension. So we're stopped here. One of the possibilities is having knots. Like I said, a knot could be formed through a number of different methods. It could be your body rebuilding minerals, it could be stress related, tension related, it could be dehydration related. There's a number of reasons why muscles like seize up and refuse to let go. But one way is what some people call trigger point therapy, myofascial release, or honestly, there's a lot of other practices like dry needling, electric needling, which all follow a similar idea, which is finding those pressure points and generating blood flow to those pressure points to create a place where it's going to release and ideally heal. So for my quad, I'm just checking my quad by going pronated on the floor in kind of an elbow plank position. I'm rolling my quad up and down this foam roller. And what I'm looking for is the difference between pressure and pain. And it should go from pressure to ow, ow, pain. But your face will show that there's a notable difference. When you have found a knot in your quad in particular, the way you floss it is to lengthen that spot. So let's assume I found a knot there. I'm going to take my heel, bring it up toward the sky, and 5 to 10 repetitions on that spot in order to floss that particular knot. Now, the difficult part of this fascia release practice when you first start is understanding what a knot feels like. A lot of times, like, oh, this all hurts, or oh, none of this hurts, and kind of creating a scale. What I like to do with my clients is the very first time I see them wince in the face, they're like, oh, my face. It obviously hurts because I'm expressing it. At that time, I'll ask, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the least, or 0 being no pain, 5 being maximum pain, like intolerable maximum pain, what would you give it? Or 1 to a 10 scale. And we just get a number. And then as we check different knots, keep getting those numbers. And then the goal is to bring those numbers down over time. Really, it's pretty amazing how quickly a couple of sessions where you're doing fascial release with stretching can gain you a ton of mobility back. A good segment of my clients are a little bit older, and they're folks who've had a combination of injury, sports injury, or life injury, where they then lose a bit of their mobility. And they're like, oh, I'm afraid to use that. And they don't use it, so it gets even tighter, even shorter, and it's even bigger risk of injury. Like, for instance, I have people who are like, oh, they always bend over because they've lost the ability to bend here at the knees. And so with a little bit of fascial work on the quads, and all of a sudden, it's not so bad to go a little bit lower, and a little bit lower, a little bit lower. And then the strength that was lost from not being able to come down to this position is regained through the practice of maybe adding an assisted, like you're holding up to a rope or bend, and just working assisted squats at the low end of that range of motion until it's regained.
Yeah, I can't agree more on the stretching, and I'll and it's kind of funny because it comes and goes all the time, right? So
Yes.
You have a scenario where when you're fighting on your knees, a lot of times you're sitting on your heels and you're pretty used to it. And then as I got older, I found that there are times I can't go onto my knees, the heels anymore, and I have to work on stretching and trying to work out the quads to try to get that stretch in there.
Exactly.
I know that we do a lot of body weight squats, so getting into that kind of squat position and hanging in there and hanging out in there. A lot of people, because we do so many ladder drills and things like that, we do that a lot to keep the legs loose, and that's helped us gain a lot of flexibility through that.
Absolutely. Yep. Like you're saying, that's a really good example of a potential point of injury in armor fighting. When you get legged and you're now on your knees, you need 2 things. You need the ability to have active toes, right? Your toes need to be tucked underneath you. Because if they aren't tucked underneath you, you go over the top of your foot, and that's a very easy ankle sprain. And then 2, you need quads that are flexible enough so that your knees don't have all that tension. And if you get knocked over your back again, you don't blow up your knees. I want to demonstrate just real quick for those who prefer a visual example. Active toes means I'm doing this when I get legged. See how my toes are folded under? So that no matter how much I get knocked back, I'm not going to explode my ankle. If my feet are like this, if I get knocked back, I have a lot more potential of hurting something here, as a lot of force is knocking me back this way. That's 1. 2, if I can't even set my butt all the way down, there's a ton of tension already here in my the smaller ligaments connecting to my knee. And these big muscles probably won't explode. Sometimes you tear a quad, but it's unlikely compared to the smaller ligaments in your knees that will more likely tear if now a large amount of force is exerted upon me where I can't get my butt to my heels. It's forced upon me. And hopefully your ligaments can give and then retract as you come back up. But if they don't and something has to give, it'll be the weakest part. And like I said, the above and below your kneecap, your patellar ligaments, tend to be what give in that particular an unfortunate circumstance.
So and just kind of to compound, add to that is I know that, stretching also allows to work all those small tendons and things so that you do have flexibility in them. And that could even just be from standing and stuff like that, when you get hit on the side or things like that. The more flexible you are sometimes in those positions, it'd take a little bit more to get to a place where it aggravates your knee.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it.
Um,
I'm gonna send you some audio.
all right,
Give me a second here.
no problem. While you do that. So again, I'm going to remind the audience, and I know that everybody's a little shy and don't want to come on camera, and that's fine. But this is a great opportunity. Sometimes the good part about an opportunity to being on camera is that you can ask questions a little easier, and Bumi could ask them, answer them face to face a little bit. So again, you're welcome to come on camera. If you have things, we're hopefully going to try to do a couple more of these for sure, because I got a ton of questions. Myself, I could probably keep a show together for Bumi and he gets sick of my voice. But I think that the key here is that the more we understand about all of these things, the smarter athlete we are. And I think that's a huge part of what we do, especially for those that may not have been athletes when they were younger, and you had trainers and coaches that forced you to stretch and forced you to do these things. But what they were doing is teaching you a discipline why we do these things. And if you didn't play sports when you were younger, you never got that discipline. You may not know why, or have ever been really explained why you stretch, why you strengthen, all of those pieces. So this is the chance to actually learn more for yourself. Also, it makes you a smarter person when you go to the doctor and explain to them what you need, what you want, what's happening in your body, because really you're responsible for your body first. It's your body. You have all those feelings. You know what you want out of it. So the more you understand that, the more you can explain it to the doctor, the better it is.
Absolutely. And to build off of that, one of the things that a prior question was about proprioception. One of the things that I think is very valuable in life in general is the practice of introspection about your body. Just taking time to think about how the pain is happening. Is it good pain? Is it bad pain? Is it pushing toward injury? Those sorts of questions that you ask yourself go over it.
That audio got through.
Let me check, and meanwhile, I'm going to post a question, and I'll go check for that audio.
Okay. All right. I am good for rolling ankles. Always have been.
Oh yeah, this is a great one.
Okay. All right, chat. So this is asking about ankle stability and rolling ankles. This is a destabilizing foam pad. You can also use a Basu ball. These things are like $20 on Amazon. I bought some more today. I give them out to people because I think it's really important to pass the love. So if you can imagine, whether it's in rapier and a very linear based movement, or whether it's an armored movement, just lateral movement, or really more of a focus on lateral movement. We do all of this in the woods at Penzig, in uneven terrain, on hills, with clumps of grass, and sometimes mud, and sometimes in pouring rain, like this last Lantern crowd. All those factors lead to higher risk of imbalance, losing your balance. So I want to demonstrate some simple ways to practice doing your balance. So on a simple foam pad, if I want to practice my linear balance, all I'm going to do is kind of shift my weight in that linear fashion. So something like a forward lean. You can see my ankle and my knee. It's all working hard as I go forward and back. If I want to make it a little bit more complicated, I can hold the weight or get my arms involved and do like an overhead extension while doing my forward lean. If I want to practice lateral movement, I can start to lean to one side using my leg as a counterweight. And practice those sorts of lateral movements. I can counterweight to the other side. Come back. All of this is causing my leg that is down to have to balance. You can see I have to catch my balance regularly. And it is, in this context, not a bad thing to fall. In fact, you want to fail some percentage of the time. You want to be practicing at a level where I would say 40% of the time you're falling off your pad and having to catch yourself in the course of a set. Because then you know it is an appropriate amount of challenge. Both balance and flexibility, stretching, I believe it is the intensity that you need is undervalued. So the way you measure it in balance is by how many times you are destabilized. The way you measure it in stretching is how intense does it feel. It should be like, when I started doing those wall quad stretches, to get my quad stretched out for myself so many years ago, I broke out into pain sweats for the first like 3 months while doing it as I started to make progress. And I couldn't upright myself at all for the first month. I had to like add extra distance away from the wall with my knee until I could get my knee into the corner. And just doing that progression over time. Much like the last rep of a hard strength set, where you're like, oh, I'm struggling, it's so hard. It's taking 4 times as long as the rep before. It should be very intense. Now, if you are good with the balance pad, you've done some kind of keeping yourself stable for a longer period of time, the way to make that more intense is to do things that add an explosive dynamic movement. So for instance, this is something I did earlier today just as part of my own workouts to kind of warm up my linear and lateral movements. I'm doing single leg jumps. And so I'm going to do single leg jumps in a linear fashion and back as well, just jumping backward. It's great for you because you can do asymmetrically, go forward, and then side to side. So for myself, in my setup here, I'm going to try to jump over the mat. I'm going to be on one leg, practicing a lateral jump to one side, try to catch my balance, lateral jump to the other side, catch my balance. So be linear at the front, nice and easy. The hard part here, trying to figure out how do I jump back. So that is the practice. Now adding a layer of explosion and dynamic movement. All of these things are done in a controlled space where if you fall, the consequences are very minimal, and you want to practice falling because then you know it's a difficult enough task. Whereas out in the world, when you're out in the field, when you're fighting, when you're in the woods of Penzig, when you're in a puddle of mud, or someone's shoving you, at that point, you will hopefully have the training that will allow you to prevent that injury.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. And I think the key is we started those with as ankle exercises, but really balance comes all the way up through your leg into your knee as well and works all those side to side small muscle tissues around your knee, which a lot of times they get ignored, correct?
Correct, yeah, exactly.
And what I found through doing, I had a number of people doing ladder drills through COVID with us. And what we found was, we would just allow them to stretch to where it was just at the edge of uncomfortable. And over time, they learned how to stretch farther and farther. They strengthen their knees because we do a lot of forward jumping and backwards jumping movements and side to side movements all the time in the ladder drills. And a number of them actually stopped wearing their braces, and even a few stopped wearing them when they were fighting, right?
That's it. Honestly, what you're talking about is something that is a current, that there's a push, which is using, prescribing as a doctor, prescribing strengthening as opposed to relieving the symptom. And that's something that there's an ongoing conversation in this space where traditionally doctors will be like, I want to remove your pain, right? Deal with the symptom. So if you have arch pain in your foot, most of the time they'll be like, hey, let's prescribe something to just fill all that space, and that way it's fully supported. Which is okay, it does take away the pain. But generally, if the person is able to strengthen it, you stretch it out so it's not so cramped all the time, and then you go back and strengthen, grabbing with your toes, then you will forever have the ability to not use that device all the time. Hopefully that makes sense. There are occasions where, depending on the age, the situation, we don't have that privilege. But that said, I think it is underprescribed to go out and strengthen some of the weaknesses that you might be feeling in a particular movement or part of the person.
Yeah, it's interesting because Duke Valharic had that issue with his foot, and he had a SCA person that happened to be a doctor as well, retired with, tell him to go try flat feet shoes. And there's a lot of companies out that now do them. And he had tried all the other stuff prior, and it was just getting worse. And he was going to skip Penzic, and it took 2-3 weeks before on those flat shoes, and he was feeling perfectly fine. But now when he went into an arch, then it started aggravating him again. And that's just, I think, like you said, that strengthen your feet. And there's a lot of people that have been saying that by building that arch, you're essentially weakening your foot. So there's a lot of barefoot runners. There's all kinds of stuff like that. There's a lot of great information out there.
That's exactly it. And then relevantly, when you need to roll out the bottom of your foot, you're using golf ball because it's proportionate size for the muscle.
Oh, yeah.
You're trying to work.
So here's another one here.
This one says from JJ, after knee surgery, trimming a torn muscle or torn meniscus in other various parts. Is there anything that can be done other than stretches / more padding that can kind of prevent it? Yes and no, because of the severity, depends on which side it's on. I have clients who have, for instance, a medial tear in their meniscus, so if you work the outside line more than the inside, because the inside, and it depends on the angle of the tear. There's also the consideration of like there are some pains that come with age, like for instance, an arthritic knee is going to hurt regardless. And you can actually put you're going to have to replace it. That's the honest, like, truth of that particular circumstance. You're saying it's all around on my left and the side on my right. If it's all around on your left side, there might not be a way to stretch reasonably without really kind of tearing away the last bit of it meniscus and or getting into your ACL. But that's where kind of going slower into your stretching progression might yield the results you want. I think that depending on the severity of the loss or the tears, you should honestly replace it. It's pretty fucking amazing nowadays. The tech is there, the material science is there, and you're back on your feet pretty quick development nowadays. It's not awful. For your right side, because it's just the inside, I think you're wrong. I think you are able to work your right knee with all quads, the hamstring stretches and forward folds, as well as working on the adductors. Just be careful with the adductor, where we'll go with the camera. So an adductor stretch, is the inside of your thigh. So you're saying your right knee on the inside has, that's where the meniscus injury is. You don't want to do too much of this because that's where you're going to get the maximum pain. So you can do things that kind of lean to the outside, but definitely do the forward back motions, right? So what I'm talking about, stretching your quad out, or stretching your hamstring out, or your hip flexor out. You should be able to do all those things in this line, and just make sure you're not folding them to the inside, which is creating the angle where that meniscus is opening, stretching that torn section. And then if you do adductors, you're gonna have to do these in a way that doesn't cause strain here. So there's a couple different ways. Like you might just go where your knee is down, and then you start pulling your knees apart to stretch inside here. You might do a bent version where your toes turn out, so it pushes a little bit more linearly, and do this horseman stance, which gets up into your high adductor complex here, high groin stretch. Those are some good alternatives to stretching out your leg when you're going lateral stretching. And then for linear stretching, you should be fine. But like I said, be careful with specifically hurting that right knee by bending the wrong way.
I think the key, one of the big keys there you talk about is making sure, and this is always, if you can, because some people are built different, is trying to keep that knee over in front of the toe, right, in the same line. There you go. No problem. I think what you're talking about, and I talk about this when we're fighting, is to try to keep that knee in line with your toes sometimes. And I think we see that a lot in fighting. When people are throwing a sword blow, a lot of times they don't move their foot, but they'll turn their knee in to throw a blow, and then they're offline. And so that tends to be a dangerous position. Something people realize, is be careful with that type of deal. You're better off being on the ball of your foot and turning your toe and foot in the same direction your knee is actually going.
Yep, that's it. And to your point, so yeah, with what we were talking about earlier, ideally you can root that knee in both lateral corrections and strengthen it as well. Like have good internal and external rotation. For those in the chat who watch American football, like tackle football, not the Eurovision kind. Can you imagine when people tackle each other? They usually they attack them at the hip or at the knee. And if a huge human who throws their shoulder and all of their weight at my leg, if I'm not able to rotate my hip inward, right? This is hip rotation, external hip rotation, internal hip rotation, keeping my foot planted. This my particular range of motion. If my range of motion of internal hip rotation isn't good enough to absorb that blow, if my leg only comes this far inward, when they hit here, first my meniscus and then my ACL explode. And that's just what happens all the time in football. You get these guys who are huge legs, massive legs, and just don't have a ton of hip rotation left. They just have this little bit of hip rotation movement, so that when they get hit here, they don't have the ability to then collapse. And this is an example of a lack of mobility that's, even though they're probably many-fold stronger than an average human, that created a lack of mobility that enough force caused something to explode as opposed to give.
You're throwing another one up on the screen here. Just a comment.
I know for fencing, the stress style for a while, because most Italian lunges were problematic. It's a lot of range for this lunge. I'm trying to find lots of different ways to get my knees working better. Absolutely. I think for fencing purposes, I have worked with a number of folks who just can't bend their knees in any significant way for an Italian lunge. My recommendation is to practice stepping and doing so dynamically. Brannos might be able to comment on this. For the armored side, for myself on the rapier side, I think one of the over-taught things is that when someone puts a sword in your game, the first thing they usually teach you is this nice, pretty, like, oh, Italian lunge. Right, we're doing all these things, or like a kind of more modern strip fencing version of that lunge. But for a lot of folks, because there's not enough mobility to be able to get that knee bent in this deep fashion, one of the things you can teach is simply to practice stepping in a way that gets you the same amount of distance covered. So it's really about practicing that active toe and that back foot and kind of springing forward. And at that point, you're more upright the whole time. So I spring forward and then deliver my attack with my arm, as opposed to attacking from back here and delivering my attack with a lunge. I tend to do this anyways, because stepping forward allows me to now have the option to lunge if I need to afterwards. I can take a much more shallow lunge to secure the kill, as opposed to having to hit somebody with a super deep lunge from back here, which leaves me at risk. Hopefully that.
I'm glad you had that covered. I got some the internet issues going on. Had a little storm here, so. I'm glad you had that covered. So we got about 10 minutes left. I think the key here is we're learning quite a bit. Looked like somebody just joined us.
Hello.
So let me pull them in for a second. It's an interesting name, so we'll see how this goes.
It's the avatar thing. It's great.
Oh, there we go.
What is this?
You got a fan.
Oh, how's it going? This is, do you have any fitness questions?
What is it?
Fitness questions. So like, any questions about fitness or mobility or flexibility, etc.
Do y'all like haikus?
You're gonna do this with haiku?
Do y'all like haikus?
Yeah, right.
Every single day, we stray further from our God. repent for your sins.
All right. I appreciate your haiku.
Yep. I think he's on some of your other shows, isn't he?
I don't know the person. Sometimes
Oh, you knew him.
happy
He must
to
have pulled it up somewhere else. Well, at least that's one of those scenarios we get with open mic sessions, right?
Correct. I was going to say that's I think that's part of the whole interaction. I think it's kind of fun.
Let's try this again. We got somebody else.
All right.
All right. Go ahead, Crispin. Go ahead, Your Highness.
I wanted to ask a little bit about cross. Like I know, I am talking.
Yep, we can hear you.
Like I know what works for me, but I'm curious what other people do all the time.
You mean specifically for cross training?
Cross training for fighting. Like I do a lot of doing and a lot of lifting.
Is this for armored fighting? Specifically, yeah, absolutely. All right. So,
for myself, and what Brannos teaches as well, because he's talking about the ladder drill, there's a lot of like fast footwork. What I was doing earlier, using like single leg motions like this and really pushing my explosivity helps a lot. That again works on balance as well as explosion, both lateral and linear. One of the things that helps a lot for me is backwards jumping. I do this a ton. I'll do this weighted as well. But doing things like this, trying to maximize my back jump is very important because it helps create balance. It makes my tibialis a lot stronger. It helps create the balance that's necessary because I spend so much time in sports driving forward, whether it's in armor or whether it's in fencing, right? Those motions of pushing forward, driving forward, I want to have a little bit more balance for myself going back. Other than that, for myself, cross training means things like making sure I'm super flexible in my posterior chain and my anterior chain, right? I want to have all these abilities so that I don't explode if I'm put into compromised positions and knock on whatever the fucking I haven't exploded yet. I'm about to cross into a new decade, so
hopefully that continues to improve effect.
So, Crispin, did that kind of answer some of your questions?
It answered a lot of it. It's are you going to be at Pentic? It's someone I
Oh,
would.
yeah.
We should sit down.
Happily so. It's for everybody out there. If you see me on the field, if you see me, I play on both fields. I do all the war points. I usually do some version of Iron Man. That's my ability, as well as hitting the big tournaments that I like to do every year. Grab me, come with capacities and talk shop. I love this stuff, and I do this because I want the community at large to be able to have longevity in their fighting. I have way too many friends who basically I'm like, hey, you're gonna explode, and then X months down the line, their knee explodes and they have to get a new knee because they just can't. They have no hand flexibility or whatever. And I've just seen that way too many times, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. I want people, and if you grab me, I'm happy to diagnose one-on-one. I've had quite a number of humans that have come aside, they have a specific issue, we work with a specific plan for that one issue, we run through some techniques, we run through some work, and then a few months later, like, hey, my shoulder feels way better thing. And that's what I really hope to give in this particular interaction.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for coming on tonight. This is a topic I kept on hoping would come up. So.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Yeah,
thanks for jumping on the screen.
I worked up the courage, I guess.
Awesome, love it.
Yeah, it makes the episodes much better. So I was happy, and I have a feeling if we keep going, more and more people will. It just they can see how easy it is. Thank you again.
No problem. Thank you.
So for those that are going to Pentic, and if you want, you just hit the leave studio, and that'll pull you out. There you go. So for the people who are going to Pentic, we actually scheduled Coach's Corner again to be out on the field the first week, Tuesday through Friday. We'll be trying to put some classes together. Maybe I'll tap Bumi to talk about some stretching classes and things for if you're going to be there, Bumi, first week at all.
Is that that's Tuesday, Friday, next week? I'm there 2 weeks. The last 11
oh my! So we'll tap you. We're going to be out on. We did this last year. We live streamed live streamed one of the fields. We did a couple classes. I didn't do a lot because it was the first year. We just wanted to get people to know what's going on. This year, I plan to add a couple more instructors, and it's a great way to get some instruction. We'll do teaching some ladder drills. We'll be going through a lot of those things. So
Yeah,
love
happy to work. Yeah, for me, Peace Week has always been my vacation.
Yep.
In the Pennsic world.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah.
I talked to a number of Dukes, and they were all like, I would just come for Peace Week if we had classes and pick up like this all week. So,
Okay. So you're trying to drive some more people out to Peace Week. For me, that's the time I get to like actually catch up with folks. There's not as many people there, so I get to like have longer conversations, and the day is packed with responsibility and in-game stuff.
Yeah, and the good part is you get some really good time with people for your own education and training as well. So it's
absolutely, I love it. Yeah,
perfect place. So, all right, I think we're at the top of pretty much at the end of the show. And as we thought, we probably had some technical difficulties. We dealt with the random haku. So
I like it. It's hype.
And here's a haku for by one of our folks asking questions. It's I thought was pretty good here.
Yep. From Tegan, here's my haiku. Injuries happen. Stretching can work for fighters. Great program movie. That's a fantastic quote. Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So hey, we dealt with that. There's a couple of things I saw, and me and Bumi will talk about them and how we can make the show a little bit more. We'll talk about setting up a little bit better with some of the audio recordings and use those when we have to, and maybe even some pre-questions that we can come up with if in between people showing up and doing things. Thanks for the people that did come in and want to participate. It does make the show a lot of fun, and it's always good to see people that are normal folks that attend these. And I hope you liked it. Let us know, even if it's just reaching out to me or Bumi. And if you have questions, definitely reach out, because I'll pass them along, or you can get them, in multiple places. And we'll try to make it a little bit better every time. And Bumi, thank you a ton for. I really liked. There's a number of things I liked here, and I would really almost like to dive in more, like how to tell certain tests to tell what you may be wrong with you and things like that. I thought that was great, and I really liked how you put those in place. Some of the stretches, I really liked your building, like your forward and backward motion is a great one, because you're 100% right. We do practice a lot of forward motion. So you get that imbalance that you're talking about.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Hikers have that issue.
Yeah, exactly. That was excellent. So once again, I'd like to thank everyone. Bumi, stay on. I'm going to end the stream, but stay on a little bit. We'll talk and see what we can do to make it a little better for everyone. Thanks everyone for asking questions, because those questions really do help. And they really do make a show. Bumi is really, really interested in helping people. I've had a number of talks with him. He's a wonderful person. I can't wait to actually meet him in person at Pennsic. And I'm hoping that we see everyone else at Pennsic as well. And thank you for coming out and hanging out on the show on a Wednesday night like normal. And we look forward to our next show. I don't have the list in front of me. I'm usually always teasing people and making them say what it is. But I'll follow up and make sure we post the shows earlier than I did this time. And but thank you again, and everybody be safe. And we look forward to having you back at the show next time. Thank you.
Take care. Good night, guys. Bye.